They say evil leaves a stain, not just in memory, but on places. Some buildings breathe with it, some walls remember. And in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, there stands one such place. Its windows reflect the city's lights, but inside, darkness has made itself at home. This isn't just any hotel. This is where nightmares checked in and never checked out, where guests vanished, where killers lived among tourists, and where one rainy night in 2013, a young woman rode an elevator to her final destination and was never seen alive again. Welcome to the Cecil Hotel, America's most haunted hotel. And tonight, we ask the question the world still can't answer: what really happened at the haunted Cecil Hotel? Part 1. The Dark History of the Cecil Hotel. The year was 1924 when construction began on a brand new hotel in downtown Los Angeles. The Roaring Twenties were in full swing, and the developers had big dreams: marble floors, stained glass windows, and a lobby so ornate it would rival any hotel on the West Coast. When it opened in 1927, the Cecil Hotel was marketed as an upscale destination for business travelers and tourists. Located on Main Street in the heart of the city, the hotel stood 14 stories high and held 700 rooms. It was elegant, affordable, and placed in what was then a growing neighborhood. But Los Angeles was changing, and fast. A city in decline. Just a few years after the Cecil opened, the Great Depression hit. The glamour of the 1920s gave way to the harsh realities of the 1930s. The once vibrant area around the hotel slowly began to decay. Businesses closed, families fled, and a wave of homelessness, addiction, and desperation swept through the streets. Over time, the hotel's clientele shifted from out-of-town businessmen to long-term transients. And as the neighborhood crumbled, the Cecil's walls began absorbing every drop of tragedy that passed through them. Soon, whispers began to spread. People weren't just staying at the Cecil, they were dying there. A pattern of death. The first recorded death at the Cecil Hotel was in 1931. A guest named W.K. Norton was found dead in his room after ingesting poison. A tragic, isolated incident, or so it seemed. But over the next several decades, more deaths followed. Suicides, overdoses, mysterious falls from upper-story windows. A man shot himself in the head in 1934. Another slashed his throat in 1937. A woman leapt from a 9th-story window in 1947, killing herself and a pedestrian she landed on. The building gained a reputation, not just as a place where people died, but where something seemed to invite death. Some began to call it the Suicide Hotel. Others whispered it was cursed. Staff reportedly found a body in a room every few months. Skid Row's shadow by the 1950s. The surrounding area had officially become Skid Row, one of the most impoverished and crime-ridden neighborhoods in the country. Thousands of homeless people lived in tents and shelters surrounding the hotel. The Cecil, once proud and refined, had become a cheap boarding house with weekly and monthly rates. Its residents ranged from the mentally ill to addicts, sex workers, and drifters. The line between guest and ghost began to blur, a breeding ground for darkness. Staff and guests reported strange phenomena for years: cold spots, whispers in empty halls, flickering lights, and shadowy figures standing silently at the ends of corridors. But what set the Cecil apart from other haunted hotels was not just the paranormal. It was the evil of the living, because while the walls of the Cecil absorbed death, they also house killers. Coming up next, in Part 2, we dive into the stories of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and Jack Underweger, the journalist turned serial killer, both of whom made the Cecil their hunting ground. Were these men drawn to the hotel's darkness? Or did the hotel create them? Stay tuned. Part 2. The serial killers who called Cecil home. If the walls of the Cecil Hotel could talk, they wouldn't just whisper about suicides or ghost sightings. They'd scream about the predators who walked its halls, Monsters who didn't come to die, but to hunt. Because long before Elisa Lam's final moments in that eerie elevator, the Cecil was already a house of horrors. And two of its most infamous residents turned it into a lair for serial murder. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. In 1985, a man named Richard Ramirez checked into the Cecil Hotel. Tall, gaunt, and dressed in black, he blended into the darkness of Skid Row without much notice. He was often seen returning in blood-stained clothes, barefoot, slipping silently through the hotel's back entrance. He was just another face among the addicts and criminals who lived there. No one suspected he was in the middle of a killing spree. But Ramirez wasn't just any murderer. He was the Night Stalker, a Satan-worshipping serial killer who terrorized Los Angeles with a string of home invasions, rapes, and brutal murders. From his base at the Cecil, Ramirez would stalk neighborhoods, break into homes at night, and leave behind scenes so violent, detectives were shaken. He used knives, hammers, tire irons, guns, anything that could maim or kill. And then he'd return to the Cecil to sleep, to hide, to blend in. The hotel's indifference? The strange thing, no one at the hotel reported him. The blood on his clothes, his erratic behavior. It was just another night at the Cecil. The building had become a haven, a blind spot for people like him. A place where horror could go unnoticed. In 1989, Ramirez was finally caught and convicted of 13 murders. But by then, the damage was done. Evil had made itself comfortable at the Cecil. Jack Unterweger, the journalist killer. If Ramirez was chaos, the next killer who checked into the Cecil was a mask of charm and intelligence. His name was Jack Unterweger, and unlike Ramirez, he didn't come from Skid Row. He came from Austria, a journalist, a writer, a man the media adored because he had supposedly turned his life around. In the 1970s, Unterweger was imprisoned for strangling a woman with her own bra. While behind bars, he wrote plays, poems, and books. He became a celebrity, a reformed man, they said, released early, celebrated, even invited to speak on rehabilitation. But no one knew that Jack Unterweger hadn't changed. He had just learned how to hide, hunting again at the Cecil. In 1991, Unterweger came to Los Angeles under the pretense of writing a true crime article. Ironically, about prostitution and crime in LA, he checked into the Cecil Hotel, just like Ramirez, and shortly after his arrival, sex workers began to vanish. Police would later discover that Jack had murdered at least 3 women during his stay at the Cecil, all strangled with their own brass, the same signature as his earlier crime. Once again, the Cecil had unknowingly housed a serial killer. Or, perhaps not so unknowingly, was the hotel simply unlucky? Or had it become a magnet for darkness? A hotel that welcomes death, 2 serial killers years apart, same hotel, same hallways, same air. Think about it. What are the odds? How many other places in the world can claim multiple serial killers among their long-term guests? Was it coincidence? Or something more sinister, something that fed off death and lured evil in? In part 3, we examine the most infamous event in Cecil Hotel history, the tragic and deeply disturbing case of Elisa Lam, and the elevator footage that terrified the entire world. Her death left more questions than answers. And maybe the hotel's darkest mystery yet? Part 3, The Elevator Girl, the death of Elisa Lam. Of all the dark stories tied to the Cecil Hotel, none have captured the internet's imagination or fear like the case of Elisa Lam. Her death wasn't just tragic. It was bizarre, unexplainable, and to this day, it remains one of the most unsettling, unsolved cases in modern history, because long after she died, Elisa was still moving, and the footage of her final moments would haunt millions across the globe. The disappearance. Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old student from Canada, bright, curious, friendly. She had dreams of seeing the world, of documenting her travels, of finding herself. In January of 2013, she left home on a solo trip down the California coast. She visited San Diego, then made her way to Los Angeles, where she checked into the Cecil Hotel. She called her family every day, until she didn't. On January 31st, Elisa vanished. Hotel staff said she'd been acting strangely. Her roommates even asked to be moved due to her odd behavior. One staff member said she had been wandering around the lobby, talking to herself. She missed her checkout date, didn't respond to messages, her phone stopped pinging. The LPD launched a search. Dogs combed the hotel. Police searched her room, the hallways, even the roof. But there was no sign of her. The elevator footage. 2 weeks after she disappeared, police released the last known footage of Elisa Lam from a security camera inside the hotel elevator. The video quickly went viral, viewed millions of times. What it showed was terrifying. In the footage, Elisa enters the elevator and presses multiple buttons. But the doors don't close. She waits. Then peeks her head outside, as if checking if someone is following her. She quickly jumps back in and hides in the corner, then steps out, steps back in, steps out again. Her arms flail oddly. She moves as if she's talking to someone who isn't there. Her gestures are unnatural, almost puppet-like. Then she steps out of frame entirely. The elevator doors never close until after she's gone. No one else appears in the footage. No sounds, no signs of struggle. Just Elisa. And something that isn't there. The discovery on February 19th, 2013, nearly 3 weeks after Elisa went missing, hotel guests began complaining about low water pressure. Some said the water was brown, tasted strange, had a smell. A maintenance worker climbed up to the roof to check the water tanks. When he opened the hatch of one large tank, he found Elisa Lam's naked body floating face up. She had been inside the hotel's drinking water for weeks. Unanswered questions. Her phone was never found. Her clothes were in the tank, but not on her. The tank was heavy, with no fixed ladder. And the hatch was closed when she was discovered. The autopsy listed her death as accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder cited as a contributing factor. But that only led to more questions. How did she get onto the locked rooftop? How did she lift the heavy tank lid and climb in alone? Why was she behaving so strangely in the elevator? And was she really alone? The internet exploded with theories. Was Elisa being followed? Was she on hallucinogenic drugs? Was this a psychotic episode? Or a case of demonic possession? Some pointed out eerie connections to the tuberculosis outbreak in Skid Row that same week. The name of the test used to detect it, Lammy-Lisa, coincidence, or something more sinister? Something beneath the surface? Others say Elisa Lam was just another victim of the Cecil Hotel, that something dark, something ancient still lingers in its halls, something that's drawn to vulnerable minds. And when it finds them, it doesn't let go. Perhaps she was haunted. Perhaps she was chased. Or perhaps she was invited. In part 4, we go beyond the crime scenes into the paranormal encounters, ghost sightings, and legends that surround the Cecil Hotel. From guests who felt cold hands dragging them out of bed, to shadowy figures pacing the hallways, to voices whispering from the empty walls. Is the Cecil truly haunted? Or is something far older than ghosts hiding within it? Part 4. Ghosts, Curses, and the Paranormal at the Cecil Hotel. It's one thing to hear about death. It's another to feel it in the air. Former guests at the Cecil Hotel, those who live to talk about it, often describe the same sensation. As soon as you step inside, the air feels heavy. The lights buzz, the walls feel too close. Something watches, something waits. Because while serial killers and suicides made headlines, the real horror of the Cecil Hotel may lie in what you can't see. Room 1006, the room that screams. Staff have long avoided certain rooms. One in particular, room 1006. In the 1950s, a guest named Goldie Osgood, known affectionately as the Pigeon Lady of Pershing Square, was found murdered in that very room. Strangled, stabbed, raped. Her killer was never caught. Since then, guests placed in room 1006 have reported waking up unable to breathe, as if someone were sitting on their chest. Others have heard guttural moaning from the vents, even when no one else is nearby. More than one guest claimed to see a woman in a blue dress, Goldie's signature outfit, staring from the corner of the room. And sometimes, she's crying. The elevator ghost. Even after Elisa Lam, the elevator has remained a hotspot for strange phenomena. Multiple guests have reported the elevator malfunctioning, going to random floors on its own, stopping on 14, even though the hotel only has 13 labeled floors. Some guests have tried using the elevator only to have it refuse to move until they step out. Then it closes and moves with no one inside. One man swore he saw a shadow standing behind him in the mirror, only to turn and find no one there. The footage he caught on his phone was later deleted from his device, without explanation. The girl in the hallway. There's one story nearly every night security guard agrees on, though most refuse to talk about it openly. A girl, pale, maybe 10 years old, wandering the halls in silence. When approached, she vanishes. No scream, no trace. But here's the terrifying part. She appears only after 3 a.m. and always on the 9th floor, the same floor from which multiple suicides occurred over the decades. One guard quit mid-shift after following the girl to a dead-end hallway, where he said she turned to look at him with hollow black eyes and smiled. The basement. Staff say the basement is the worst part of the building. It's where the boilers hum endlessly, where the air is damp, thick, metallic. The walls are streaked with mildew and something darker. Multiple workers have refused to enter it alone. One plumber claimed he heard children crying from behind the concrete wall, but no children were staying in the hotel at the time. Others have reported hearing voices whispering their names or catching glimpses of figures crawling along the ceiling just out of sight. Paranormal Investigations. Over the years, ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have flooded the Cecil. Most don't stay the full night. In one documented case, a team from a major paranormal YouTube channel spent the night locked in room 504 at exactly 3:17 a.m. Their cameras shut off. Their backup audio captured only a woman screaming, followed by a strange static hum. They left the next morning, shaken, pale, silent. One never returned to paranormal investigation again. Is the Cecil haunted, or something worse? Ghosts are the easy answer, but the Cecil feels deeper than that, older. Some occult researchers believe the location itself sits on a spiritual fault line, a place where the veil between worlds is thinner. Others claim rituals once took place there, satanic ceremonies in the basement during the 1970s. There were whispers that Richard Ramirez worshipped at an altar in his room. Could the evil in the Cecil be more than just spirits of the dead? Could it be something that never lived? In our final chapter, we look at what the Cecil Hotel is today and why. Despite its rebranding efforts, the darkness still lingers. Is the story over? Or are we just waiting for the next headline from within its cursed walls? Part 5. Is the curse of the Cecil Hotel still alive today? For decades, the Cecil Hotel was a destination for death, a magnet for tragedy, violence, and the unexplained. But what about now? The hotel has changed names. It's been rebranded, renovated, cleaned up. But despite all that effort, the darkness remains. And the question no one dares to ask out loud still lingers in the air. Is the Cecil Hotel cursed? The Stay on Main rebrand. In 2011, the Cecil underwent a makeover, new paint, modern furnishings, a new name, Stay on Main. The idea was simple: bury the past, distance the hotel from its disturbing reputation. But just 2 years later, Elisa Lam's death dragged it back into the spotlight, and no amount of rebranding could hide the stain of history. The hotel closed down in 2017, only to reopen again under new management in 2021. This time, it wasn't just a hotel. It was supportive housing, aimed at helping the city's vulnerable population. A noble idea, but some say the building didn't like the change. Unexplained incidents continue. Even after the renovations, strange reports persist. Guests, mostly low-income tenants and transitional residents, speak of cold spots, flickering lights, and feeling watched. Some say they hear footsteps above them when no one is upstairs. Others have spoken of sleep paralysis episodes, with a dark, faceless figure sitting on their chest. One maintenance worker claimed he heard crying behind a locked utility door. When he opened it, the room was empty, but the crying continued, echoing from inside the walls. A curse you can't escape. Here's what you need to understand. Most haunted locations have a ghost. One story, one tragedy. But the Cecil Hotel? It has layers. Serial killers, suicides, possessions, unsolved mysteries, a century of pain, all trapped within 14 haunted floors. You don't need to believe in curses to feel the weight of what happened there. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the Cecil isn't just haunted by the dead. Maybe it's haunted by everything humanity tries to forget. Why the Cecil haunts us all. The Cecil sits on the edge of Skid Row, a place of poverty, addiction, and abandonment. Some say the hotel didn't create the darkness, it absorbed it. That it's not the ghosts we're afraid of, but the truth that places like this exist. That people die alone, that evil walks among us. That some doors, once opened, can't be shut. The Cecil is a mirror, and what it shows us is terrifying. Final warning. If you ever walk by 640 South Main Street in Los Angeles, look up. You'll see the windows still dark. The fire escapes rusted and silent, the rooftop tank still in place. And if you listen closely, you might hear a faint buzz from the elevator shaft, or a whisper from behind the walls. But whatever you do, don't go inside. Because people don't just die in the Cecil Hotel. Sometimes they vanish. Sometimes they come out different, and sometimes they never leave. This was what really happened at the haunted Cecil Hotel, a building drenched in tragedy, mystery, and blood. If this story chilled you, consider subscribing. There are more real, terrifying stories waiting, and the next one might just be closer than you think.